The human specialist and the Ithrian have been inseparable for weeks. It's clearly beyond professional. Marcus froze outside the mess hall doorway, recognizing Commander Valeni's distinctive voice. He hadn't intended to eavesdrop, but hearing himself as the subject of conversation stopped him cold. Cultural exchange requires close contact, came Captain Herschel's measured response. Reeves is doing his job. With respect, Captain, I've observed their interactions. The Ithrian touches him constantly. They share meals in private. Yesterday, they were in the Arboretum together for 3 hours, and I assure you they weren't discussing syntax patterns. Marcus felt heat rise to his face. He and Alara had indeed spent yesterday afternoon among the ship's plants, where she had been fascinated by earth flowers. The memory of her wonder as she experienced their scents for the first time was still fresh, her typically composed features transformed by simple joy as she inhaled the fragrance of jasmine. Your point, Commander? The captain sounded weary. The Ithrian delegation is critical to the new trade negotiations. If the Council learns one of their researchers is involved in fraternization, the diplomatic implications could be severe. Marcus backed away silently, appetite forgotten. The commander's words had put into stark reality what he'd been avoiding. His relationship with Alara, whatever it was becoming, had consequences beyond personal feelings. He found himself walking almost unconsciously toward the xenobiology lab where Alara conducted her official research. As the door slid open, he saw her working alongside her Ithrian colleagues, her graceful movements distinct even from across the room. She sensed his presence immediately, looking up with the subtle eye brightening that he now recognized as her version of a smile. But as she moved toward him, another Ithrian, Tavril, her senior researcher, intercepted her with a sharp gesture. Their conversation was conducted in rapid Ithrian that Marcus could only partially translate, but their body language was unmistakable. Tavril's posture was rigid with disapproval, while Alara's normally fluid movements became increasingly defensive. When she finally approached Marcus at the lab entrance, her expression had reverted to the distant mask he hadn't seen in weeks. We need to speak privately, she said, her voice carefully neutral. They walked in silence to an empty conference room. Once inside, Alara engaged the privacy protocols before turning to face him. My research team has expressed concern about my objectivity, she stated without preamble. They suggest I have become inappropriately invested in a specific research subject. Me, Marcus said quietly. Yes. Her fingers traced restless patterns against her palm, the nervous gesture she could never quite suppress. Tavril believes I am compromising our mission by allowing personal interest to supersede scientific protocols. Marcus leaned against the conference table, trying to mask his own turmoil. And what do you believe? I believe, she began, then faltered, the conflict evident in her usually assured demeanor. I am experiencing difficulty separating research objectives from personal discovery. The clinical language couldn't disguise what she was really saying. Marcus closed his eyes briefly, remembering Commander Valeni's words. I overheard similar concerns from my commanding officers, he admitted. They're worried about diplomatic complications if we're seen as too close. Then we've reached the same conclusion from different directions, Alara said, her voice unnaturally flat. Our interaction has exceeded acceptable parameters for both our peoples. The words felt like a physical blow. Is that what you want? To return to acceptable parameters? What I want is irrelevant, she replied, but her hands betrayed her, clenching tightly at her sides. The mission must take priority. Marcus crossed the distance between them, close enough to see the rapid pulse at her throat. Alara, look at me. Not as a researcher. Not as an Ithrian. Just look at me and tell me what you want. Her indigo eyes met his, and in them he saw a storm of conflict. I want contradictory things. I want to honor my people's ways. I want to continue my research. She stopped, visibly struggling. What? Marcus pressed gently. I want to understand why being near you makes me feel as though I've discovered a new spectrum of light that only I can see, she whispered. I want to know if this feeling has a name in your language that doesn't exist in mine. The raw honesty stunned him. Before he could respond, the door chimed, and they stepped apart as Captain Herschel entered with the Ithrian delegation leader. Specialist Reeves, researcher Alara, the captain acknowledged. I believe we need to discuss the parameters of your cultural exchange program. What followed was an excruciatingly formal meeting in which both human and Ithrian authorities expressed concerns about inappropriate methodologies and compromised objectivity. The substance beneath the diplomatic language was crystal clear. Their relationship was causing problems. Perhaps, the Ithrian leader suggested smoothly, a different human specialist could continue the exchange with researcher Alara, one without established patterns. Or perhaps, Captain Herschel countered, another Ithrian researcher could work with specialist Reeves. Marcus glanced at Alara, whose face had become an impenetrable mask of Ithrian composure. Only the almost imperceptible tremor in her hands betrayed her distress. "If I may," she said, her voice perfectly controlled. "The research has reached a critical phase. Introducing new variables would compromise 6 weeks of established data parameters." The Ithrian leader tilted his head. "What do you propose instead?" "A structured continuation," she replied. "Documented sessions. Supervised interactions. Regular reports to both command structures." Marcus understood what she was doing, fighting to maintain their connection within the constraints their superiors would accept. He quickly added his support, emphasizing the linguistic breakthroughs they'd achieved and the diplomatic value of their work. After what felt like hours of negotiation, a compromise was reached. They could continue working together, but under stricter oversight and with clear professional boundaries. As the meeting disbanded, Marcus and Alara found themselves momentarily alone in the corridor. "This changes things," he said quietly. "Yes," she agreed, maintaining a proper distance between them as a group of officers passed by. "But perhaps not in the way they intend." "Meaning?" Her eyes met his briefly, and in them he saw not defeat but determination. "When something is forbidden," she murmured, "it becomes necessary to discover new ways of communication beyond conventional understanding." Before he could ask what she meant, she was gone, disappearing down the corridor with the rest of the Ithrian delegation. That night, Marcus found a small data crystal in his quarters, with no indication of how it had arrived. When he activated it, a single line of text appeared in Alara's precise handwriting. "Some distances exist only to teach us the value of crossing them." The botanical laboratory hummed with quiet activity as Marcus entered, nodding to the technicians who barely glanced up from their work. This had become their sanctuary over the past 2 weeks, a place where their meetings could be justified as research into earth plant specimens that might thrive on Ithria. Alara stood by the orchid specimens, her back to the door, but Marcus knew she had sensed his arrival. The subtle straightening of her posture told him everything her carefully neutral expression would not when she turned to face him. "Specialist Reeves," she acknowledged formally, conscious of the technicians within earshot. "I've been analyzing the atmospheric adaptation capabilities of these specimens." "Fascinating," Marcus replied with equal formality, sliding a data tablet across the workstation toward her. "I've brought the linguistic analysis you requested." Their fingers brushed as she accepted the tablet, a brief contact that sent a familiar shiver across his skin. To anyone watching, it would appear completely professional. Only Marcus noticed how her touch lingered precisely 3 seconds longer than necessary. Their private signal that she had something to communicate beyond official channels. The system they had developed was elegant in its simplicity. Data tablets exchanged in plain sight, containing hidden folders accessible only through a sequence of commands they had designed together. Messages embedded in research notes. And occasionally, when truly necessary, brief touches that communicated what words could not. Later, in the privacy of his quarters, Marcus accessed the hidden folder. Alara's message was characteristically precise. "Observation deck. 0200 hours. Security rotation creates a 7-minute window of sensor maintenance. Confirmed safe." Marcus smiled at her methodical approach. Even in breaking rules, Alara maintained scientific thoroughness. The observation deck was officially closed during Gamma shift, its lights dimmed to simulate night. When Marcus arrived, using his linguistics specialist clearance to bypass the standard lockouts, Alara was already there, a silhouette against the vast starfield that dominated the transparent ceiling. 7 minutes, she said without turning, before the sensors reactivate. Marcus moved to stand beside her, careful not to touch her yet. Their stolen moments had become precious, each one a small act of defiance against the constraints placed upon them. "I've been thinking about what you said last time," he began. "About the fundamental incompatibility of our species' approaches to connection." "It was a logical assessment," she replied, still watching the stars. Ithrians process intimacy through shared mental frameworks. Humans require physical and emotional reciprocity. I don't believe they're as mutually exclusive as you think, Marcus said. I've been studying Ithrian philosophical texts, the pre-rationalization ones you sent me. Now she turned to him, surprise evident in her expression. Those texts are discouraged in modern Ithrian education, which is why they're so revealing, Marcus replied. Your ancestors understood something your contemporary society has forgotten. They believe true connection transcends methodology. From his pocket, Marcus withdrew a small object, a crystal prism he had replicated using specifications from ancient Ithrian designs. This is a thelrax, he said, using the Ithrian word. Your ancestors used them in pair-bonding ceremonies to symbolize how two beings could perceive the same reality through different perspectives. Alara's eyes widened as she recognized the artifact. How did you know about this? I told you I was studying, Marcus smiled, placing the prism in her palm. Hold it up to the stars. She did so, and the crystal fractured the starlight into patterns of color that danced across her skin. The geometric markings on her face seemed to respond, subtly shifting in hue. Beautiful, Marcus whispered, watching the transformation. This is how Ithrians once shared emotional states, Alara explained softly. Before the rationalization. The patterns communicate what words cannot. Like this. Marcus asked, taking a second prism from his pocket and holding it beside hers. The light patterns merged and transformed, creating new configurations where they overlapped on their skin. Alara's breath caught. You've created a Thalvan joining. The patterns, they're synchronizing. I've been practicing, Marcus admitted. It's taken weeks to get the angles right. Her free hand reached for his, fingers intertwining with an intimacy that had deepened through constraint. In ancient times, only life partners would share patterns this way. I know, Marcus said quietly. The realization of what he was offering hung between them, more intimate than any human gesture could have been. To an Ithrian, this wasn't just romance. It was the offering of a shared reality. My research team would consider this cultural contamination, she whispered. Your commanders would see it as inappropriate fraternization. And what do you see it as? Marcus asked. Instead of answering with words, Alara stepped closer and pressed her forehead gently against his. The most intimate gesture in Ithrian culture, one that even pre-rationalization texts described as reserved only for the deepest connections. The sensation was unlike anything Marcus had experienced, a subtle electrical current that seemed to flow between them, carrying with it impressions and emotions that transcended language. Not mind-reading, but something more profound, a glimpse into how her consciousness perceived the universe. When they finally separated, Marcus found himself blinking back tears at the intensity of the connection. That was unprecedented, Alara finished for him. I've never shared consciousness that way with anyone, not even other Ithrians. Is that what we just did? Shared consciousness? Not precisely, she explained, her voice tender in a way he'd never heard before. We created a bridge, a hybrid way of connecting that is neither human nor Ithrian, but something new. The ship's chronometer chimed softly, warning them that their window was closing. With reluctance, they stepped apart, though their hands remained joined. This complicates everything, Marcus said, though he couldn't bring himself to regret it. Most significant discoveries do, Alara replied, a smile, a real, human-like smile transforming her features. My original research question was about understanding human connection. I never anticipated becoming the subject of my own study. And what have you concluded? Marcus asked, gently stroking the patterns on her wrist. That connection transcends species boundaries, she said. That despite our different evolutionary paths, we share something fundamental, the capacity to create meaning together. She paused, then added with uncharacteristic vulnerability, and that I no longer wish to study human intimacy. I wish to experience it. With you. The sensor warning flashed, indicating 30 seconds until reactivation. Marcus quickly pocketed his prism, while Alara concealed hers within her research uniform. This won't be easy, he warned. Your people, my commanders. Nothing of value is obtained without challenge, she replied, the determined scientist emerging once more in her posture. We are, after all, researchers. If existing parameters don't accommodate our discovery, then we must establish new parameters. As they prepared to return to their separate quarters, maintaining the illusion of professional distance that would satisfy their superiors, Marcus realized that what had begun as cultural curiosity had evolved into something revolutionary, a connection that defied categorization in either of their worlds. Until tomorrow, Specialist Reeves, Alara said formally as they reached the corridor junction where they would part ways. Until tomorrow, Researcher Alara, he replied with equal formality. But the look that passed between them spoke a language that needed no translation, no cultural interpretation. In the space between human emotion and Ithrian logic, they had found something rare and precious, a new way of being that belonged uniquely to them. As Marcus walked away, the impression of her consciousness still echoing within his, he understood that they had crossed a threshold from which neither could return. Whatever challenges awaited them, they would face them together, not as human and Ithrian, but as pioneers of a connection that transcended the very boundaries they had been assigned to study.